Cool. Yeah, well, we're rolling, man. So whenever you want to kick this thing off, you're hosting this thing, right?
I mean, I can. It's not outside my repertoire.
I know, I know. I like having guys on that run their own shows. They kind of understand like what's going on, and they don't get all weird and nervous on a mic and shit. So it's fun.
No, it is an art form, though. I mean,
It
you're
is.
on episode 100 something, hey?
Yeah, 170 something. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the reps come, the questions flow, the conversations get easier. It is a fun art form because it translates to what I do for work anyways, which I'm professional question asker. I help guys solve and dissolve problems. So I think it's super functional. And then it's such an easy platform to talk to humans and learn from people you want to. So it's like, there's no downside to podcasting in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I was on record saying this not long ago, but I don't think everybody should have one because there's some really fucking bad ones out there, and I try to keep those as far away from me as possible. But mine was really bad when I first started. Like, it was fucking terrible, dude.
Yeah, and I don't think the bad part of like the skill set, like you give anybody 50 reps at a conversation, I think they get better. But the content wise, yeah, I think there's a niche for everybody. But if it's in service of even yourself, like selfishly learning, or the goal of sharing like good information or at least your perspective, I haven't seen a lot of like I can get through podcasts where you can tell people are new. And you can still see it's almost like a refinement process for myself where it's like I used to do that and I still try and refine. Like I say like a lot right now. It's kind of like one of my default fillers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hear other people's podcasts and I hear more ums and uhs, and I was like, all right, I got some of those out of my system, and I'm still working on it. But again, I just like the art form.
Yeah, and I like how you described it as an art form. I listen to the majority of podcasts for the host. I like to see how they host their show, what kind of questions they ask, how they don't, or maybe they do step over their guest. It is literally an art, and it's fun, like putting the episodes together. I don't know if you mess around with that. It's kind of time consuming, but I'm working on some kind of newer stuff, like intro, outro type bullshit over here, and it's kind of fun. It's just putting the pieces together.
Yeah, I did that. I mean, I like for 10 episodes, I shopped it out somewhere, and it was C minus material, like quality of graphics, intro,
Yeah.
outro. It just like it didn't make sense, and I had the time now. Like I haven't pumped out my podcast for a year, and I'm bringing it back, some more solo based stuff, and I already have like 6 or 8 in the clip. So,
Cool.
but yeah, but the editing people, that's another. I mean, that's why I think the grinders in the podcast game. I think most people do that to start, and people aren't like because most people charge 150 plus just to edit and post it, let alone like make clips and highlights and those kind of things. So it's like people that are still on their first 100 episodes, 150, whatever it is, like, I think they're grinding. And regardless, I like to keep things in-house and keep fingerprints on things.
Yeah, me too. Anyways, how old are you, brother?
Me, I am 36 now.
How long you been out of the league?
Like a hard 5 years.
Okay. And how did that come to an abrupt stop? A little bit early, no? Well, not really. 30. That's pretty. I mean, you did 8 years, right?
I did 8 years across 4 or 5 leagues, but yeah, abrupt stop is probably like an aggressive attack at it. It was a weird.
It is. Yeah, no, it is.
It was a weird out. I busted my ankle up and they misdiagnosed me. They told me I had a deltoid tear when really I had this massive chondro lesion on the outside of my ankle. So I should have gone on IR right away. But I was a captain for the Texans at the time, like on special teams and like kind of somebody that kept guys in line and made some calls on the field. So they told me I could miss 4 weeks and come back, and I did that. But I was playing at 85%, and they were just shooting up my ankle. I probably got 40 shots in my ankle that year, and I just limped. And if you can't play 100% in the NFL or at least 95%, you're gonna get your ass kicked a little bit, and that's what happened. And put out some bad film across the league. My agent at the time didn't want to tell their teams I was 30 and hurt, which isn't a good look in the NFL. So it just kind of fizzled out. I hung on to it for a while, tried to switch to long snapper real quick, but yeah, it came to a close.
Were they jacking you up with like Torterol or what?
Yeah, so they would give me Toradol, and so I have a weird blood condition where I can't take a lot of blood thinners. I have ITP. It's like low unexplained low blood platelets. So I was more on the stem cells, but what they were shooting locally in my ankle, not cortisol, but basically a numbing agent. So from my ankle down, so like I couldn't really feel my ankle or my foot for game day. And so that was a shot on each side. So I played 10 games. There's 20 shots plus probably 8 to 10 stem cell shots and then cortisol. And, yeah, they're just loading it up. It's kind of football 101 a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of guys are starting to talk about that. I've noticed too.
Yeah, and I just think it's an interesting side of the sport. Everybody's always known it. At least it's not as much pain pills as it used to be. But I still do think they don't understand it fully, the repercussions on the organs, the long-term effects. And then one thing that we were using to mitigate some of the, not painkiller, but anti-inflammatory effects and a Toradol shot a game plus a pill at halftime kind of recipe a lot of guys were using was BPC 157, a peptide that we would take into the stomach, and with the goal of helping heal the stomach and some of the organ damage.
Yeah. I don't want to talk ball really a whole lot at all. I am just, I'm sure you get that a lot. I'm really more curious as to what it is that you're doing now. What you're doing, I think, really interests me, and I think will interest a lot of people. But I did want to ask you this one question. Was there a point in time, like growing up in high school, college, whatever it might be, maybe it was a specific play, maybe it was a specific game, where you're like, I might have a real crack at this thing. I might make it. Was there like one moment that sticks out in your mind?
Not really. Everything was pretty organic for me. I was always really good at baseball, and then football. I just was natural at like playing defense, and so like okay, next thing I knew, sophomore I was on varsity. Then like a couple weeks later, I got a scholarship offer as a sophomore, and I'm like, oh okay, I can go play college. Then I get to college, and it's like okay, I'm here. I got free school. Like I'll do that whole thing, and then I was like playing as a redshirt freshman and then starting and then everything just kind of organically went. Not till like the end of my senior year did I think I had a shot at the NFL, and then the worst best thing to happen to me is to root in the belief that I could play in the NFL, which is what like the back half of my senior season was, and then these mini camp tryouts that I got where I didn't get signed, but I got to compete against draft picks, like high draft picks. And once I knew I could play, like I went arena, UFL, got cut from the UFL, went to the CFL, got cut, played 2 years, like got practice squatted. I took the licks, I got the scars because I knew I could do it, and I didn't want to be a real human doing the 9 to 5. Just that was kind of like the carrot and the stick for me, and I was lucky enough to earn a spot back, get vested, get 4 years, and I mean it was a dream come true. But it wasn't the dream long term. But it turned out to be a awesome ride, awesome life.
Yeah, 8 years, of professional football is no joke, dude. I mean, you lived out a lot of people's dreams. Let's just put it at that. It might not have been like your long-term goal or your long-term dream, but man, the percentage of that, I mean, you probably know the statistics on actually making it on a roster is like what, less than 1%, something crazy like that?
Yeah, it's something super low, but again, it wasn't like I look back now and I see, I beat the odds all over the place. Like I beat the odds getting a scholarship. I beat the odds even playing any level of professional football, let alone like the 3 guys that get out of the CFL and come back to the NFL every year and things like that, let alone get like P squad. I was like a 26-year-old rookie. Like I went on some like mission trip and from BYU, I made it work, and it was a cool capstone to end up as a captain for the Texans, and that was probably for sure my proudest moment in professional football. But yeah, it's like, but at the end of the day, it was a lesson that I take everywhere with me now. Is like the odds never matter. Like
Yeah.
if you keep your head down and you work, like even if it didn't work out for me, like I guarantee I would have got some lessons. Or at least understood the work capacity, and I wouldn't have had the regret of not trying. But again, like the worst best thing to happen to me was that I got it rooted that I believed I could play and solved a bunch of problems and did a lot of learning along the way.
Is there one thing you've learned about yourself since getting out of the league that has surprised you?
Great question. Yeah, I think the identity and the titles and that kind of thing was the biggest learning thing. Was where I was all like part of that. I was chasing pro football title. I was chasing X.
I'm in the NFL.
Yeah, something like that. But I like even when I was in the NFL, I didn't tell people I was in the NFL. Like
Sure.
I'd say the easiest thing to say that like I learned about myself is that like if the titles change, but the capability is where your focus should always be. And so once I kind of got that rooted post football, like my capabilities made me a pro football player, but these capabilities don't translate to potentially like another thing right now. So I need to focus on my capability elsewhere, and that's what I did. But yeah, I mean, you learn that like life's kind of made up of like 4 or 5 parts anyways, like who you're around, where you live, what you do, and like what information you take in, kind of whether that's
Yep.
entertainment or like education. So it's regardless, like it's still a puzzle piece, and it changes outside of football, where like football, I think a lot, and same with military, a lot of people get it misconstrued that like you can leave this mountaintop or this big profession and then replace it with another one, like go one for one, when really, like let's just look at like what sports and football was. Well, it was like a workout routine, it was my friends, it was my income, it was X. So like it has like all these puzzle pieces and you can replace it. So I was able to eventually find that perspective outside of football, and there's way more freedom in it because it was something I went into entrepreneurship, I got to choose, where now, okay, they don't tell me when I train now. I choose when I train, I choose how I train, who I train with. But football was easy. Like, oh, I got 52 other friends of like mind, of high performance mindset to push me. Awesome culture. I got my structure, I had my schedule, I had my income. I like football is just like a one pretty gift wrap package of a life, but there's no freedom in it. They choose all those things. And like I can earn more pay and that kind of thing, and like I can choose who I make friends with in the locker room, but it doesn't change my environment. So once I've started like cultivating this lifestyle outside of it with more freedom and excitement, I was less like, fuck, I want to keep playing football. Like I want, why can't I play? I beat the like I didn't watch football for at least a year because I'd see guys I used to beat the fuck out of, and and it would piss me off, and I'd get mad, and I didn't like how I'd feel. So I stopped watching, and then I jumped on this kind of new mindset where it's like, no, it's like nothing's changing. Like I'm not going back. So like let's make this life what I want it to be. And so I pieced in jiu-jitsu, I pieced in powerlifting to like supplement some of the culture and the friends and the training mindset. And then I started learning, and I started creating my business, and it just flowed from there. But it's something that I think everybody's always got to be excited about their life, whether no matter what your title is or what age and anything. I think that's a little more of a clean look at life, because I think I speak to kids sometimes right now, and like high schools here in Columbus, Ohio, where I don't think they excite the kids a lot at times, where I try and make this massive point that you're so time rich that like Elon Musk would train spots with you just to redo it and get all this time back. And then they have so much time to fail and try again and meet new people and do all these things, where I always emphasize with adults, like our time's ticking. Like past time, it like belongs to the Undertaker of the world. So now, like, and I have this farmer buddy in Maine that's super fun, but every person he meets that comes, like, he's kind of like this OG wise consultant, not consultant, but like villager in Maine, and people come and they air their problems, and he helps them and listens and solves them and that kind of thing. But he's like an OG, and he puts everybody on this 80-inch ruler, and he goes, "How old are you?" Same as you asked me when we started this podcast. 36, stand on 36. He goes, "If you're lucky, you got 44 more left." If I think my public math was right there, but and it goes, okay, like, why are you ruminating on the past? Like, and then he's got this other perspective that I use all the time, where like if you're bitching about something or you don't like what's going on in your life, well, like he always said, you must love it. Like, you're not changing it, you must fucking love it. And so like anytime I have that self-talk with myself, it's like well, why aren't you changing how you train? Like you must love not training, you know? And it's just like it just flips me back into the right mindset, and it kind of lights a fire under my ass. But I think all that stuff is fun perspectives that I've seen people do it in different ways that I did, but it's all the same messaging. Like you got the past is the past. You are where you are right now. All you can do is learn and grow and live. And because again, I think regret is one of the worst things on the planet. And so you might as well go wholeheartedly and be excited about what you're doing. Not to rant too much for you.
No, I love that. You said this was one of your friends in Maine?
Yeah, so it's actually one of my girlfriends. He's 65, and she used to work as like a farrier on his ranch and ended up living there for a little bit. His name's Steve. He's the man. But he runs this awesome like 60-acre ranch, sawmill, grows their own vegetables, like all this awesome stuff. But he has this awesome take on life because he's lost it, all his money and everything through divorce and that kind of thing. And it happened a couple times, I think, and he couldn't be like a more grateful, happy, awesome, capable human. And I absolutely love those humans.
That's why I wanted to get more info on him. You need to be hanging around Steve as much as possible. If I was you, I know you don't live in Maine, but those are the people, man. Those kind of older, wiser guys. I love what you said, too, when he's like, oh, you're bitching and complaining, you must love it. That's the thing, right? I hate complainers. I hate people that bitch about their situation, but don't do anything to improve it. And that's what he means. It's like, you really must love it then. Like, you must love just bitching about it because you're not doing anything to change it.
Yeah, I'm going to podcast him here probably this year sometime once I get out there. But I rant on the same thing. I don't rant on it. I illuminate it, where it's like I consider self-pity the least attractive self-quality is kind of how I always phrase it. Well, why? Well, it's like you're not solving any problems. You're bitching, complaining, venting. Okay, there's time and a place for that, yes. But if it's a constant, everyday repeat to the same conversation to the same people, you're not leading yourself and you're not leading others. And I try and protect cultures of whoever I'm around. And in complaining, like bad apple syndrome is a real fucking thing. Mm-hmm. So, and if you don't think cutting corners and complaining and all these little things don't stack up and poison the well, you're dead wrong. And I also, in my world of physiology, now that I coach the hell out of, people massively underestimate the power of thought and the power of self-talk and the power of words they actually speak. And that's because we underestimate the fact that thought is a full body decision. Like, it's a massive cascade of things that have to happen for me just to raise my hand right now. You think these negative thoughts and these complaints and these regrets and these like self-criticisms don't affect every cell and organ in the body? I think you're dead wrong. And so we must trim that. We must mind those words. And complaining vocally to other people, if you don't have your house in order and your self-talk in order, I just see multiple problems in the foundation, a weak foundation. And it's a very hard, very awareness, like presence-based thing to understand. It's something I'm always cultivating because some of my like default sayings used to be like, "What the fuck are you doing, Brian?" You know. So I've eradicated that, and now it's like, okay, let's go. Don't think, just go. And like, because every time I slow think or procrastinate, the brain does what it does. It supports the feeling. Stay on the couch. Don't lift. Like X, Y, and Z. And once you kind of learn some of the weird little physiology principles in the body, you understand why some shit's so hard. And so in the world of complaining that we started on, it's really just understanding the physiological and the physical, the mental repercussions of complaining and self-talk and bad thoughts. It's just like that's one of the first things in-house everybody should try and improve.
I'm glad we're on this topic, man. I literally had a call with a guy yesterday who was thinking about, joining the team over here and getting some help. And one of the first things he said was, "Oh man, I just can't lose this weight. I just can't get my shit together." And I stopped him right there. I was like, "That's your problem right there. You don't believe in yourself. You don't think you can do it. You're not going to do it if you talk like that to yourself." point blank period. We got to shift your whole way of thinking, your whole mindset. Everything in your life is going to change now. And then he started to understand as we progressed throughout the call, but people don't even know that they're doing it.
No, and that's I do this with pro athletes. My youngest client's 13-year-old golfer. I work with CEOs. Like, I work with a broad range of humans, and the same thing exists. Like, if you ask them enough questions, you'll find the narrative. And most of the underlying problems, and this is why I tell people I dissolve problems, I don't even solve problems, because it's a narrative and a self-talk or a belief system problem that can be dissolved. So, because I'm a massive believer that, like, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. So when somebody says they can't do something, like, I just dive in. I go, so tell me why. Tell me why. 5 whys later, it's make-believe. Like, well, or they didn't think out, like, okay, I answered why. What's baby step number 1 and baby step number 2 before I rethink this decision? And now I can look at it with firmer footing. And I think once people I just think people get in their own echo chamber. That's why you always got to be conscious of your environment. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of life's problems, I'm a big return to nature guy, but, like, you don't – what's the saying? If a flower's not blooming, you don't fix the plant, you fix the environment. Like, I don't think humans look at themselves like that type of organism, when really, what information am I taking in? What am I putting in my body? And then we'll talk about the health of the plant once the environment's good, let alone, like, light and sleep and things like that. So the people that can mind their environment, let alone the feedback loops they're getting from people that have kept hearing them say the same narrative and not redirected them or said, no, that's not right. And that's why I think having people and coaches that believe in you, huge, all ages, all levels. Like, everybody just needs somebody to, like, I hope everybody believes in themselves. I don't believe in myself 100% of the time. So, like, I understand why particularly other maybe less prepared or less seasoned people in the realm of, like, entrepreneurship or grinding uphill or trying to make something out of nothing, I get that. But in that realm, my job, and I think every coach, every leader, every parent's job, is to be that cheerleader for another person. Not cheerleader, but, like, everybody needs somebody to believe in them. Because how good does it feel when somebody believes in you? Let alone, like, significant other, hell yeah. Friend group, hell yeah. And then, but, like, a lot of times in business, you find out, like, you start a business, you think your friends are the first people in the door. Nope. You know, it's like they don't want you to change. They don't want the plant to change. They like the plant, you know. So it's just it's fun, a fun little self-experiment to always, I think, find coaches or find new conversations, because people that haven't heard your same old shtick will call bullshit.
Mm-hmm. I'm dealing with it right now, dude. I'm a relatively new business owner, and a lot of people that I thought would be, like, cheering for me and rooting me on and following what I got going on and just supporting, just being happy for somebody who's trying to make it. Dog, they ain't there. They are not there, and they ain't coming around either. That's fine. I'm not sweating it, but it's like, okay, you see who's in your circle real fucking quick.
Yeah, it's just like I just think there's a lack of that anyways, because this comparison culture or whatever the fuck, you know.
It's bad, man.
Yeah, but hype up your fucking humans. Buy something from their fucking business. Like, and, like, I don't even sell shit. I coach, you know. Like, I'm not saying buy shit from me. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if it's I don't want to hate too much here, but, like, I don't know if it's because, like, I was programmed so young that I don't want to be the 9-to-5 person. I want to create whatever that ends up being. I want to help people. That my purpose is to help humans. Like, I know that in, like, the depths of my soul, and that's my battery for what I do. I have carrots and I have sticks that keep me kind of pushing towards that. But I think a lot of people have carrots they never chased. And when they see somebody else chasing a carrot or a lifestyle and, like, going through it while they're doing it, they're just kind of, I hope he gets it. I don't really care either way, but because then everybody just zooms back in on their own problems, you know. I just think I wish everybody was an entrepreneur. You know, I think that's where the world's going. Everybody's a lot of things will be somewhat automated out, and people will get to create and do their own thing. And it just gets into my perspective on the missteps of the world is a lot of people, we go to these jobs that we're not incredibly passionate about to get enough money to maybe do what we're passionate about one day, when I wish they would have taught us and just taught us capability. teach us woodworking and like taxes and the things that we really need to know on how to like operate as a human in the real world and
Things
run
that are applicable to life.
things that are applicable to life, but teach the damn kids, do what you love and figure out how to make money after that. Doing it, like, and because the reach of the world and the internet is fucking there now. And so, like, I haven't seen a kid do something that I think shocking yet. There's kids making millions of dollars on YouTube at like 7. You know, it's just like, but people don't believe in themselves enough to do that, and or like have a standard threshold. Like, I don't need to make $1 million. What if I make $60,000 doing something I love every day, where I get to choose my schedule and who I want to sell this to and all? Like, I think there's so much more freedom and excitement in that, but it's fucking scary. Mm-hmm. And again, getting back to my world of physiology and psychology here, the human brain hates uncertainty. So if you understand the fear and like why we hold on to negative things, I think it dissolves some of this fear we have for these risks in life. Because, okay, negative things, like why do we fear negative things? Well, or like why do we hold on to negative things? Or somebody tells us you need 3 positives to cancel a negative. Well, remembering negative things is built for survival. Like, bear bites me, I don't fuck with bears, you know? Like I eat these leaves of these berries in the wild and I poop my pants. I don't eat those anymore. I stab somebody in the tribe in the back and I get kicked out, like I'm dead. In the old days of physiology, you know? And then we want to, and it's why we all cling to routines. It's why we cling to things maybe we don't love, but at least we know where it's at. Does that make sense? It's like, I stay in a relationship that's not like great or whatever. It's like, well, at least I know where my love's coming from. I'm staying at a job that pays the bills, and I kind of like some days on Casual Friday and whatever, like on Donut Coffee Monday, doesn't matter. But at least I know where my money's coming from, and I can pay my bills and like protect these 3 hours of my day where I get my own freedom, you know? We crave certainty and like we fear change and the unknown, but you can't fear what you don't know. So like part of that's like, let's dissolve all these perspectives away. Let's teach you why your human feels this way, like why you feel nervous and scared and doubtful and fearful and imposter syndrome. That's just your human being a human. Of course, you don't know what's next, and our brains hate uncertainty. Like, why am I being so negative over this one little mistake? Our brains are built to be negative for survival. And now instead of like being one chain link away from like survival, like bear bite, now it's like, well, okay, if I don't have this financial outcome 3 chains later, I can't pay my bills, I can't feed my family. So it's still the same internal reactions, but like mentally and logically when you look at it, just a few more chains away, but it's the same physiology. So it's like, okay, like let's understand the system. Let's figure out what we really want in our lives and make a plan and go. And the last thing you got to do is just go and create feedback, because I think part of the system of action, like be about it, be like action first, just go, no perfect time, just go. You'll never be perfectly prepared, just go. I think that kind of silences out some of the goal of action is to get feedback. And it's like, even like when you train, you figure out what training's right, what you like, blah, 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 blah. But in the world of like business and products, like you have to put something out there to get feedback, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong or for the right market, or maybe a new market shows up. And like, so it's just like you have to do stuff to get feedback to improve and stay on, or potentially stay on a faster path to success and growth or whatever. So I just think when people look at the why you must act is for the feedback, and you don't want to be where you are a year from now, 10 years from now, that kind of fear, that stick side of the carrot and the stick analogy. And then other than that, just understand all these mental games and physiological games that happen before you even go and before you even believe in yourself. I just think all that stuff's demystifying for the world of taking chances on yourself and betting on yourself.
What do you think is more impactful, the positive feedback or the negative feedback?
Negative feedback all day, every day.
Explain.
Again, I think this is a massive coaching leadership mistake as well. But like, if you just look at problem solving, what's the fastest way to solve problems? It's not, hey, you did good. Like, hey, next time, could you like maybe tweak your TPS report? Like, it's been out of format a couple times. Like, but you're still doing a great job. Like, gift wrapping stuff and bubble wrapping stuff is not maybe if the person's like very accomplishment or praise based, but really like if you're solving problems, you ask questions about it, you try and disprove it, you try and find all these things about it. And that's the one thing I do love about football is the explicit negative feedback. And it's like it has this negative stereotype, the hard ass asshole coach, but those guys solve problems fucking fast. And the cool thing about football is they didn't bubble. Hey Brian, next time can you spill the fullback so the running back doesn't split our defense like that? Or like, hey, maybe cover this guy because he's the guy that caught the ball on the touchdown, you know? No, it's like, Brian, cover your fucking man, spill the fucking fullback, and I don't emotionally respond. I say, yes, coach, boom, problem solved.
Yeah, or we won't see you next Sunday, dog.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah. But I don't have to go to HR. I don't have to have 3 managers tell me the same thing in a different way. Like, negative feedback is the fastest way to solve problems, so I'm a big believer in developing a massive negative feedback tolerance. Like in the breathing world, for me, CO2 tolerance is important, but like I try and encapsulate life into building tolerances, stress tolerance, all these things. But negative feedback tolerance, if you have thick skin and you put art out in the world or a product or a service or anything and people criticize it, all they're doing is giving you feedback. Like, okay, I need a massive tolerance so I can make the best product, I can solve problems the fastest. And, like, that's a superpower, is being able to take criticism, because really when you start trying to poke holes in ideas and processes and systems, you're only going to fortify everything and improve. But but it's very common to bubble wrap things and not be negative very fast and worry about people's fleeting feelings, all these things, when really, like, fast feedback is the best way to improve, I think, any skill, any product, that kind of thing.
So being able to receive feedback, negative feedback especially, you believe is a skill?
I think it's a massive skill, and it's becoming a superpower because a lot of people can't take it right now. Yeah. And so I just think,
would you classify it as being like, hey, that person's coachable? Is that kind of like the same realm of things?
Yeah, coachable, tough, whatever. Like, it's just because like when you get to the people in football, I'll use football because I know that best. But in football, when you get a guy that emotionally responds to yelling or failure or mistakes and those kind of things, now the coach has to change and waste so much energy just to, like, tailor things to you. When really the goal of being a professional in anything, let alone football, is to be predictable every snap, every day. And so, because, like, if a coach has to worry about, like, what Tyler shows up today, like, is he in a good mood, is he in a bad mood, do I have to worry? Like, I'm wasting energy that's not taking us towards the goal of prepping for this week and winning the game, you know? And I think the faster you can convince and teach and educate people on how to be a professional of anything, particularly even though college sports is pro football now, but anything you do, when you're interacting with other people, you should be predictable, even though that sounds like a bad term. But if they know the attitude you show up with, the work ethic you show up with, the attentiveness, the toughness, and the negative feedback tolerance, i.e. coachable, dude, you're going to be a fucking pro for a while. And you do the little things right, all this stuff. Like, that's what a pro is. And so when you get into the opposite side of these tough people or these people with high negative feedback tolerance, you waste a lot of time. The coach has to bubble wrap words, and they have to play off your energy, like all those things that I think happen at scale in the businesses I work with too, where it's like, why are we all getting offended by this stuff? We're all just trying to solve problems and be successful and get the fuck out of here, you know? So I just think it's the toughness side of feedback has dwindled a little bit, but I also think it's on us coaches and leaders to educate people on what negative feedback and criticism truly is. It's not ill-hearted. It comes from a great place. Like, I want you to get better faster. I don't want to have to soft feed and baby bird you information because you can't take my words. Like, I just think there's room for leaders to intervene and become better leaders by explaining what they're doing, particularly with the negative feedback.
Brian, I love doing this show, man, because I've talked to professional athletes like yourself, team guys, CEOs, guys that are just at the top of the top in their fields, and they take what they've learned in their field, whether it be, 8 years for you, 10 years for somebody else, whatever it is, but they apply everything that they've learned. For you, it's football. You apply everything that you've learned from football into real life shit, and you give that to other people. You instill like your mindset and lessons you've learned and being able to take feedback. Like football taught you a lot of that shit, right? Like all these team guys that I have on here, they just operate different, man. They think different. And a lot of them do such a great job of trying to instill that into other people. Same with the CEOs, the business owners, entrepreneurs. There's something different, but the more you talk to them, the more obvious it is. Do you find that as well? Because obviously, like you are around prominent people giving what it is that you do. Is it obvious to you? Is it as obvious to you as it is to me?
Yeah, I don't want to default and blame it on wiring if that's what you're chasing there.
I'm not chasing nothing.
No,
I'm just curious.
Rephrase the question real quick? So you're saying, as far as the underlying qualities of like these successful humans, or like this type of the DNA of these people?
Yes.
What?
Yeah, the guys that are at the top of the top in their field, or once were, in your case, being in the NFL, that's top of the top.
Yeah.
Same with Navy SEALs, same with CEOs. These guys are uber successful, and in my opinion, seeing that I get to talk to a lot of them frequently, they think different, they act different, they speak different, they walk different. Yeah, that's very obvious to me when I see it and I hear it. Do you catch on to that vibe as well? Because I know you're surrounding yourself with people like that too,
Yeah.
and I think it's huge that you're speaking that to the public where people aren't up at that level.
Yeah, and I think we do see some of the outliers in that realm. Not everybody gets out of football and out of the team, like special forces, the same. I still think there's helpers and there's voices and there's leaders split the same, and I think there's just as many guys that struggle, and they struggle in silence. But yeah, that DNA, once you've been to a high level of performance, you kind of always know what you're capable of. And you may not be able to replace it one for one. You might not get the validation or to do the crazy cool things that you did in the previous one, but that's your story that you have to come to terms with, and then you can add meaning elsewhere in your life to get the same similar responses that feed you. And yes, there of course there's habits, comfortability around other high performers that you see across the board, because I do events where military and pro NFL, ex-NFL athletes all talk about the experience, talk about the transition, and yes, dude, some of the stories and the remedies and the mindsets that I've seen succeed after their first mountain, whatever that was, are I think in my head all the time, only a SEAL, only an NFL guy would be able to jump to that and create this system to execute again. But there's so many guys that can't too. So I just it's not all I was saying is not across the board, but I do think it's there's levels and scale to everything, where part of what I do and why I do it is to inspire people like myself, ex-NFL guys, special forces, but really every human to just chase your fucking potential.
Mm-hmm.
And just because the title changes doesn't mean your potential isn't being maximized. I try and push and motivate and nudge and post a quote or whatever will get a logic point into a human's brain that says okay, I'm too comfortable. Well, why am I depressed or sad or whatever? It's probably because I'm not pushing myself and growing. And that's why Chasing Edges was my podcast and my brand for a little while, and it's a mindset that I constantly chase because I do think growth is the root of human happiness. So I think that the more people always shock themselves back to that mindset, which I think football, you're constantly learning and growing a new team every year, let alone prepping and learning the team you're playing that week. And the same with the enemies and downrange and all the from demo to skydiving and all these other things you learn in the teams, on top of weapons growth and new tech tactics and all this stuff. those jobs and those things gave us awesome systems to cultivate the capability to learn fast, be tough, take negative feedback, and grow rapidly. And so we have to find ways to replicate that. And so when I get around these people you're referring to, dude, I just listen like a motherfucker and ask questions, and which is what you're doing, and which it sounds like why you love it too. We're like, yeah, so like, because I didn't answer your question greatly earlier, it's just like the people that are the outliers that got through it and they have this gear 5 that nobody else has, or this tenacity or tone of voice that nobody else speaks with systemically, like when they talk through their systems and they go through like 10 steps in their head when I need a whiteboard, it's just like, okay, I need to, like, let's listen to this guy. Let's ask him some questions. So whenever I'm around the people you're talking about, I spit my shit if they want to learn some physiology and breathing and exposure and psych from my side, but I'm asking questions 9 times out of 10, and I'll sprinkle in a story from me if it applies. But yeah, dude, again, it's the curious mindset of the wise man we talked about earlier. Is like when you're around wise men, ask wise questions. Sure. And so it's just like, hey, did you kill anybody? I'm not going to ask that to a guy that is legitimately telling me how he formulates his day to operate his best, or how he set up his business, or about the tactics they use and that like invigorate my brain because I see the football parallels and all those things. So it's just I just think it's intention. And if you keep those people, and if you work yourself and network yourself into those environments, again, if your environment is fucking savage of all these outliers and or just better people than where you are right now, better people at your church, better people at your job, or you have to start actively putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to go try jiu-jitsu to get around better people, or go around a better gym, or around people that are learning, like, or join all these virtual book clubs now, whatever it is. But like you need to be the keeper of your environment and understand. I always say zoom out and see where you're getting your information. If it's the same friends on repeat, the remember when friends that say, hey, remember when we did this, remember when you did that, remember when we were awesome in high school. New friends, zoom out, like trim the fat, pick better people, cultivate your environment, and see how much your perspective changes. And that's what I always try and do. And because I get out to Idaho around blue-collar humans now. I'm around military. I'm around firefighters. I'm around professional athletes. I'm around all these humans, and I get a story and a perspective shift somewhere, some way, shape, or form, because I'm conscious enough to ask questions and be in these environments. And so I think I strive everybody to always improve and add value to your current circle. And then keep getting around more and more humans, because I learn stuff from everybody. Like my 13-year-old golfer has probably taught me more over the past 2 years than anybody else. Yeah.
And you find yourself in a lot of those rooms where you're looking around, you're like, there's some bad motherfuckers in here. Like, I'm honored to be in here. I'm just gonna sit up or shut up. If somebody's got to like want to know my perspective, I'll give it, but I'm just a student over here. I get that every week, multiple times a week doing this show. That's why I asked you on here, man. Like, point blank period. I think you're badass, and I wanted to take some of what you believe in and your perspective and apply that to my shit, and hopefully everybody that's listening is feeling the same way. I know they are. This has been fantastic thus far, but I find myself in that situation all the time, and I have a feeling I'm kind of answering my own question, but you do too.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's fun.
Scary though too. It's like uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, and you kind of and I feel like a bitch all the time. Like just yoked up guys, like crazy, like guys that have some of the most incredible military feats, like all these things, and like even just from a patriotism standpoint, I just feel it just humbles me about how much I've taken for granted, let alone hearing the sacrifice that has been done to protect our freedom. Just like, dude, that shit lights me up. And like, that's just one side of it. And you get around firefighters and you see some of the same qualities and the same service mindset and the big hearts and doing the shit nobody wants to do, taking the 12 calls a night just because an old person fell down, Like, we think they're just out there fighting fires, but no, they're EMTs and they're getting conflict at the site, and they're getting pressed, and they have to wrestle guys to the ground sometime, and they're dealing with gun wounds and blood and people dying, and we're not grateful for those humans.
Right.
Like, it's just all, like, a lot of it just invigorates me. And like you probably don't know much about my organization, but I've driven 105,000 miles over the last like 2 years and a couple months to coach everywhere that will listen to me. Like, as much as I can coach, like, I'll try and stop at smaller colleges, like, if they can't afford some of what I do. I don't charge firefighters very much. Like, I try and serve, and then I'll go and work for like colleges and pro teams that can afford some of the stuff I do. You know, just like, I just want to help. And when you're helping in an environment like that, it's not vulnerability, but the openness is there and the respect is there. And like, I humbly come and try and add perspective or give them tools to help regulate themselves, things like that. So it kind of like a filter for them, or at least people have been very open with me across the board that it only continues to rededicate me to my craft.
Well, that's what I've kind of weaved throughout this whole episode, as Trump would say. I've been doing the weave, but I do want to talk about what you're doing now. And going back to the beginning, you kind of hinted at, like, yo, this is what I'm here to do. My goal is to help people. This is my purpose. I want to dive into that. I want to know exactly what it is that you're doing now, because not a lot of people out there can say, like, yo, this is why I'm here. This is what I love to do. Not a lot of people are in that situation. Unfortunately, they could be, as we kind of touched on. But what are you doing, man? I want to hear all about it, and I have a general understanding, but let's dive into it.
Yeah. As far as my purpose, like, the modality I'm using right now is like breathwork and mental skills. And people hear breathwork, they think woo-woo, they think meditation, and most of what I do is more like tools, application, how to down-reg faster in stress, make better decisions under stress, how to keep calm and clear, that kind of thing. And so that's why it makes sense for sports and firefighters and military. And these are all things that I found, like, dude, I was just curious as hell when I was playing. Supplements, training modalities, people to learn from, like, every IVs, shots, everything I get my hands on that was legal. And that led me to a lot of great information on sleep hygiene, on hydration, on recovery modalities, things that help everybody on the planet. I selfishly hunt them down for sport and to try and extend my career playing football. And so when I stepped out of football, the last thing I kind of learned over the last two and a half years of my career was the breathing world and the exposure world, like the sauna and ice. But the main thing was the breathing and me making better decisions on the field, because I played safety in college, and I used the Canadian Football League to gain weight and transition into linebacker. And so I hadn't played a lot of linebacker, even though I played in the NFL. So I had to learn fast all the time there. And I had the perspective that I should be the smart white linebacker Luke Kuechly type of person, because I went to Northwestern. Everybody thinks I'm smart, X, Y, and Z. And I was always overthinking and over-preparing, and, like, for good reasons, but it didn't equate to high performance on the field, great decision-making, cool, calm anticipation and execution and reaction time. But once I found this breath stuff, and I found it the wrong way, I was doing free diving protocols and Wim Hof to help me deal with the sensory deprivation chamber, but I found it showed up, like, improved my aerobic capacity, because I was technically respiratory strength training in a variant and increasing CO2 tolerance. And once I felt, because this perfect storm kind of happened where our a new strength coach came in and determined the Texans were physically unfit to run due to asymmetries and weaknesses in the glutes and hamstrings and stuff. So we didn't run for a month to start OTAs one year. And
Really?
yeah, and I was into breathing at the time. I was holding my breath for like 4.5 minutes around this window. And once we started running again, he tried to kind of run us into the ground one day, like one of our first days back, and I could hear everybody else breathing harder than me. I could see other people dying before me. I go, what am I doing? It's the breathing. There's something here. And one of my buddies found Wim Hof to, like, kind of deal with his depression and anxiety from transitioning out of baseball, so we started a company. around breath training. I was just guinea pigging stuff to improve myself. And then once I learned how to like actually press these buttons in the system to down reg, dude, my decision making on the football field escalated very fast. So I was like, once I got done playing, like I had hunted down everybody that was willing to talk to me and coach me, which was like Laird and Gabby Hamilton and PJ Nessler with XPT Performance, Dr. Belisa with Breathing for Warriors, read all the Oxygen Advantage books, Patrick McCown, and I had formulated a way to filter it and simplify it for the small brains, the athletes of the world, just to make it actionable. Because everything I looked for, like when I was playing, was like, is this too much or is it useful? Like, is this a waste of money, or is it like, is it the lowest hanging fruit? And so I always was filtering my processes, and the breath and the physiology was no different, because the breath led to psychology, the breath led to vision, and all these other things that cue us into sympathetic fight and flight, stress, anxiety tones. And while I was playing football, I was coaching some NHL guys up in Minnesota, some kids, and then it just grew from there. Like then I was coaching Ohio State baseball, and then it evolved into a bunch of colleges now, professional sports teams. I've done military work with JSOC and a bunch of charities that support veterans, and it just keeps growing. I don't advertise what I do a lot. My goal of this year is to get a lot more education out via social media and online programs so that I can help more people and scale a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing now, which involves I coach anywhere from like 8 to 12 guys and like the occasional girl one-on-one virtually. It's something that no matter where I'm traveling, I can always Zoom or FaceTime or call. I'm driving across the country half the time, so I can always I do a lot of phone conversations. But then I do these workshops, anywhere, like I'll do presentations from anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour and a half educating on what's available. But what I love is the workshops, getting hands-on. I get to educate for an hour. It covers breath, vision, sleep, just like basic level mental skills of psych to understand kind of what we talked about earlier, what your animal's doing, how we approach feedback, how we approach obstacles, and the physiological repercussions of these things and how we approach them. And then for an hour, I get to coach breath. And like breath isn't like we're just all laying on the ground doing stuff. No, like breath mobility, breath activation. Like we turn on our glutes and we warm up, but we never turn on our respiratory muscles. And then that bleeds into how to use breathing for adaptation to step into your stressor with like better blood and better tools. And then now, because like tools just breed agency, they give you leverage. It's like I always do the stupid example. Like if I told you to take apart the chair you're sitting in right now without a tool, like could you do it? Like no. Like these tools give us these massive levers, and particularly in the nervous system, you pound some of these buttons heavier at the right time with the right intention and the right volume. Like you can downreg anywhere from 10 to 40% faster depending on how bad of a breather you were. Things like that. And so my workshop, primarily ones that are like 3 hours long. Then I get to finish with sharing what I love. That my favorite recovery modality I found while I was playing was sauna and ice cycles. And sauna and ice are becoming popular, and they're very available now, so that excites me. But it also, like, it needs to be done right. It needs to be done safe. And then I go hard in the paint on those things too, depending on the group I'm coaching. But, like, am I coaching high performers and teaching them these tools and these recovery modalities, or am I teaching intro-level humans? And so you always kind of meet people where they're at. But the goal there being is just in 3 hours, the feedback I've got from some workshops just, again, continues to push me and invigorate me to keep doing what I'm doing until people, oh, we've heard this bullshit before that becomes a thing. Because some of the information is getting out there with the breath world, but it's not. I still don't think a lot of it's packaged right. Same with the sauna and ice stuff. I think people are making it into some things that's not. But at the end of the day, it's all good medicine. It's all good tools. And everybody has their opinion on how best to use them. But I enter people's worlds as like a breath and mental skills coach. It gets into all things of mental skills, desire setting, goal setting, to word choice in the box for baseball, on the mound for baseball, how to downreg fast between shifts in hockey, snaps in football, All these things, systems, sleep systems, exposure to light systems, mental skill systems to manage skill sets and capabilities. It's just like it's evolved from just breathing to just my perspective on high performance, whatever that is at whatever spot you're at. I know that's a lot, but yeah.
No, not at all. I think it's really interesting. Have you ever worked with hunters? Any like kind of professional hunters or guys that are out in the mountains a lot? Have you ever done
Yeah,
anything like that?
yeah. And I've been dragging my feet on working with Caleb. He wants me to do some videos for his. I think it's like you buy hunts on there or something up in Alaska. Now it's like nationwide. Caleb Williams. But anyways, yeah. So my first exposure to hunters, particularly breathing and hunters, was through Sornex Outdoors. Bert Soren has put together this awesome, like they're obviously weight equipment company, like best stuff in the business, like toughest, coolest, awesome stuff. But he's always had a passion for hunting since he was young. Like it's in his blood, it's in his DNA, it's his family heirloom in his world, and he wanted to merge the worlds of training and outdoors. And so maybe this is 7 coming up. So 7 years ago, he started an event called Winter Strong down in Columbia, South Carolina at their ranch. And
I think it's next month, actually, this year's.
Yep. And it just continues to grow. And they one of my college buddies, Jeremy Ebert, one of my best friends on the planet, he has been working for them for probably about the same time, 7 or 8 years, maybe even longer. But he networked me in while I was playing football. All the Sornex guys supported me while I was playing. And then once I jumped into this new space, Bert was more than welcoming, invited me down. And then the next year I brought the sauna, my barrel sauna at the time. And then the year after that, we had a big one built, which is like a 18 to 20 person mobile sauna. And then I started telling them about the breathing stuff I was doing and coaching. Then this is probably like, 2020 now, maybe. And he goes, well, what kind of stuff do you coach that's like for the outdoors? I go, well, like your tagline is like thin air, deep water is like Sornex Outdoors kind of under tagline. And I go, I coach both. I coach breathing for altitude and like rucking for like military, but it's the same thing for hunters, just common misconceptions and tactics to take into the mountains on inclines, all the above, particularly at altitude. And then how to prep for that weeks out of hunts that are at altitude. And then it bled into like Danny Bolton's another kind of staple in the Sornex Outdoors community, and deep water. I mean, he's a free diver, spearfisher. I helped him do some protocols and stuff for one of the last shows he did, and it's something that I was always kind of avid about because the free diving, I mean, it's so life and death and crazy and spiritual with them on how deep they go. And over like the last like 50, 60 years, like not much has changed in how they train, how they gauge their systems. And so like I initially, and I still have it in some of my coaching, but a lot of their systems are kind of bulletproof, and I love training that stuff. And it's progressive and competitive, which a lot of hunters are, and like eternally curious is how I quantify most hunters, because they're just trying to solve a problem of like where the meat's at that season, that year, that hunt. So yeah, I love the outdoor space. Obviously, Nock must be a outdoor performance brand to some extent. So yeah, that's kind of more or less what I've done in the space. And then I like for Winter Strong now, I always bring down the sauna and the ice and try and serve that community as much as I can.
I'm really curious on kind of like in hunting, we kind of have this thing, at least what I call is like the moment of truth, where let's say you're elk hunting and you see a big bull and he's 2 ridges over and you got to beat him to a spot. Well, you're very rarely going to, outrun an elk, hardly ever, but there are opportunities to get in front, get ahead of them, set up, and whether it be bow hunting and or rifle hunting, you're going to hustle over there, and it's going to happen quick. But you got a 40 to 60, 70 pound pack on, you're up and down hills, you're gassed. How would you go about teaching somebody to lower their heart rate in time to capitalize on that moment of truth? Because if you draw your bow back and you're going 170 beats per minute just because you ran over there, dude, the likelihood of you making an ethical shot is slim to none. I don't know if anybody's ever shot a bow at 170 beats per minute. I have, just messing around at the range doing burpees and shit. It's really, really difficult, man, to hold your pin steady enough. How would you go about that? Obviously, you have to be in great shape to kind of get your heart rate down, but is there mental aspects that you would teach in order to do that?
Yeah, there's mental and physiological approaches here. Like not as much mental, because the physiology kind of drives that
I hope my
side.
question made sense. I was kind of looking
No,
at the map
yeah,
with that, but
no, it's
okay.
a great question, and I get put in these scenarios because like military wants to know how to like for
Same thing,
snipers.
kind of. Yep.
Same thing, kinda. And then, but I run around with a lot of hunters now. Just like my good friends are hunters now, and in that realm, first step of the approach is not to let your heart rate get there in the first place. Obviously, like there's certain levels of aerobic fitness that are important. I think people sleep on like the low level cardio stuff. So like a lot of people like particularly men, we look down on like going for an hour walk every day, particularly for like the 30 days leading up to hunting season. And then you add weight and progressively overload from there and try and mimic your stressor. But the breathing thing, because like that's just like a programming thing where I'm not like a massively perfect performance coach in that realm, but breathing, that's my world. And very common mistakes for hunters, particularly mountaineering, going up and down, that kind of thing. And even more, it just gets amplified very fast at altitude, depending if you had the time to adapt or acclimate. So first thing is that we tend to, I mean, it's hard to get in. I'll try not to overcoach here. We overbreathe. We start mouth breathing and shallow breathing right when we start moving, or we're excited. Like that's the mental influence on the physiology. Look at this fucking 27, 28 pointer, across the way with all the crooked, just you see a thumper of an elk or a deer and you're like, fuck, I gotta get, like, it just amplifies its pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start scaling that back. Like this is like you earn the privilege to be there. Don't let the pressure kind of fold you by any means. But anyways, it's agitative to the physiology. It's amplifying. It's an arousal state where we'll start to overbreathe, meaning increased frequency of breathing. And then potentially, usually with the mouth breathing, the shallowness and the low volume of the breath follows suit. So first thing you need to do once you start moving, maintain full breaths. And like if you have a pack on and you have the waist strap, breathe into the waist strap. And I always again, you want a system, let's go. So full breaths is where we start, and now you work through the gears. And so try and stay nasal all the way in, all the way out, and that's your metric. Unless you have to go faster, now we'll go gear 2. But exhaust gear 1, get into gear 2 in nose, so you get all these benefits of better oxygenation, but you get the benefit now that CO2 is what makes your legs feel heavy initially and to let your legs eventually like burn out. So we want to use the mouth to dump more CO2, a lot of intentional exhales, but keep getting full inhales behind it. And then so literally you're dumping poison before it kills the legs, before it stops feeding the wolf,
Mm-hmm.
And then say, like, again, if you're kicking and you have to finish, okay, you can use gear 3. But whenever you take your breaks, try and down reg through the gears again faster. Be intentional, and like again, full breaths will always win. But like when you start talking, because you don't want to make sound either. Like obviously you're trying to be quiet in that realm. Where like with athletes, I don't have to worry about that as much because like I want them to dump the living hell out of CO2 if their heart rate's up like crazy. Like football players between snaps, particularly like 8, 10, 12 plays into a series, but hockey players after a shift, some pitchers later into innings with the 15-second clock now, that kind of thing. But dumping CO2 when your heart rate's, like when you're panting, is a winner, particularly when your legs get heavy. So it's more about intention, where it's instead of, there's like, if you can see the difference. It's a language in our physiology that we know. Like when you get dogged out, that like when you're dead tired, like I know when like a UFC fight, I could beat your ass because you're dogged out. There's a world of difference between like hands on your hips and gasping and intentionally dumping CO2. You can get like another quarter liter, half a liter of the poison out. And then after, if you are mouth breathing because you worked so hard to get up and down these mountains, I'd still like you to try and take full breaths through these whole gears. But now as you get and start getting into a shot, stronger exhales. They can still be quiet. Like nothing that would obviously spook the animal. And then when I can, get into gear 2. But like, and so like I chop up my system into like nose, mouth, inhale, exhale, location of movement, meaning volume, and then pace. And like basically like if you're breathing in through your nose, if you're extending your exhales, if they're full breaths, and then if their pace is slow, those are all buttons that slow your system down. And so I want to get back and press as many of those buttons I can when I'm really high heart rate. The exhale is going to be your money maker initially. And then when you can get into that gear 2, now the nose, the extension of the exhale, and the slowing of the pace. And then if you keep that full breath, all these things will swoop in to calming the system faster. And I do this with like UFC fighters on the assault bike all the time. And like I have a 43-year-old, he's retired. He just retired last year, but he'll get his heart rate down 10, 20 beats faster in like a 40 to 60 second rest period than some younger guys, just by conscious breathing, using these tools, pressing these buttons. And so like that's what I would chase, is just know which ones don't let it get out of control to start with, because once you start moving, you're attacking it with intention. Full breaths in and out the nose until you work too hard that you need to start dumping CO2. In nose, out mouth, extension, pace. Pace trumps everything in the breathing world. And like say you're just mountaineering to like get to your hunt spot and things like that. Like again, like the difference between like aerobic and anaerobic is really like the presence and absence of oxygen. And so if you can stay aerobic, like your breath will be your limiter, your threshold. And so if I can maintain full breaths, I won't have to stop as much. But I'm going to have to probably go slower because you have to train, like now if you want to get better at all this stuff, you have to train it prior to the hunt. And
which
then
is
now,
my next question.
Yeah, which is now like the walks, the progressive walks, and the weight and the rucks we talked about, that's all nasal. Because smaller hole like is more resistance, which is strength training. And so get really strong through the nose, because the brain doesn't care how we compensate. It only cares if we're alive or dead. So it doesn't care that once we start moving, we go to path of least resistance, which is the mouth. But if you intentionally train through the nose, you get respiratory strength, you get benefits, and like the research is from 30 to 45 days, you'll get this adaptation where the respiratory strength gets there, the increase, because like you're taking in, again, you're potentially breathing slower, just being in the smaller hole too. You're getting a little more dose of CO2 dripped in. And so like a lot of times guys I put on kind of this hunting protocol, they'll initially have to like default away from nasal breathing around like 130, 140 heart rate. And then we up pace and we up weight on the rucking and stuff, or we get them on a Stairmaster or something. But by the end of like the 30 days usually, or the 40 days if they want to extend it, like they'll get up into 170 breathing in and out their nose, and they'll just say, "Oh, it's easier." And these are just like anecdotal one-liners, but training in through the nose, it sounds so dumb, but training in the nose full in, full out, not like 100% in all the way to 0 where you're like flexing out, but full breaths into your strap on your pack. You'd be surprised if you train that. And just like, again, any elevated arousal in the system, try and lift weights breathing in and out through your nose. Like breathing just on curls, like rep 8, 9, 10, 12, like it gets hard to stay in the nose. And some people, it's very hard initially because they've been any intensity in their life, they default. And so some people don't have the nasal cavity space, because like all laws of nature, like if you're stagnant, you rot, you rest, you rust. If you don't use it, you lose it. So our nasal cavity will narrow. The membrane inside our nose will dry up and die. All these other things are a cascade of being a bad breather, particularly when you get into like training intensity. So just breathing in through the nose in these light aerobic states and that kind of thing, that increase in friction, that increase in resistance will create space in the nasal cavity, create respiratory strength that translates very fast to the mountains. And then I do like a 2 to 3 week, usually just 2 week, but CO2 tolerance training. So like in essence, we try and get the adaptations from altitude before you even get there. These are all just like suffocation variants. So like exhale walks, exhale hold walks. So you exhale everything out. It's called hypoxic. So low oxygen, hypercapnic, high CO2 training. And it's just a faster exposure to CO2 all the way into the point where you can get some red blood cells from your spleen. You get exposed to CO2 levels very high, very fast. And you're tall, like same as anything in life. The more you drink, the more you can drink, the more CO2 you get exposed to. In essence, the more efficient breathing you become, because CO2 is what gets oxygen off the red blood cell. But it's kind of like a bell curve, because at some point it does become poison, if that makes sense.
Yes. Is it primarily like you're basing it off heart rate? Is that really what you're looking at?
Not necessarily. Like it's more respiratory rate that we want to control and improve. Like my whole bit is like breathe less. If you can breathe less than you did doing the same exercise the day before, like you're becoming more efficient. Yeah. But heart rate's something I monitor closely, and like it's a very fast feedback loop. If I have the heart rate straps and the whoops and things like on guys, I'll be able to watch it and show them. Like a lot of times, like I just want people to believe the shit I'm peddling anyways. So like I baseline everybody, and then I show them what the tools do. So I let them get their heart rate up for like 4 or 5 reps doing a bike or a rower or whatever the sprint is. And then now we use my tools rep 6. And then, okay, well, your heart rate last time went from 180 to 155. This time it went down to 147. Like, okay, this is your first rep. Now try more dumps of the CO2. Transition faster. Guys feel their legs back faster between gassers, between rest on the assault bike, or if they're doing low intensity cardio stuff, like they don't burn out as soon. Like that. These are all like thresholds and metrics I chase.
I know you hinted at rucking and walks and stuff, but let's use the assault bike as an example. What would be like a good baseline kind of interval to go through on the assault bike to practice the skill?
10, 15 seconds on, like hardest, like all out sprint,
Going
40,
for it.
45 off. Again, just do 10 reps, but rep like 6, 8, and 10. Is that right? Yeah, 6, 8, and 10. Try transitioning intentionally through the gears. Dump CO2 for 5 reps. Big, strong, wide exhales. Get into gear 2, and through the nose, still long, strong. Try and slow the pace. I coach it as if it's a wind chime, respiratory rate and heart rate, or a wind chime. Try and calm the wind chime, and then flip back and just track your heart rate of those last 5 reps and see the difference.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to start incorporating some of that into my own training. Thank you for that. That was super informative, bro.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, were you in the cold tub this morning?
Yep.
Yeah. Did you post about it?
I just threw up like a story.
Yeah, I saw it.
I'm not a big social media human, but I need to catch up. But yeah, like again, the cold. Like, are you a cold tub guy? You dabble?
I'm 4 or 5 days back into the swing of things. Yeah, I was thinking about you this morning, no homo, when I got in, because I know this is your jam. But
yeah, again, like I think people turn it into something it's not. Like it's more in the category of making your bed as opposed to like Daddy Huberman supercharge your CEO routine kind of stuff. How do you feel after? You know, like how do you feel after you get out of the cold tub?
Extremely fucking cold, but ecstatic that I did it. Super amped that it's done, and I pretty much have 24 hours until I have to do it again. But, I mean, electric, to answer your question, fantastic.
Yeah, what are you doing in the cold tub? Like, how long?
I'm doing 3.
Cool, and like that seems to be the cookie cutter remedy or protocol that's out there, and I love it. Like I prefer any cold to no cold. Like I'm not hating on anything you're doing. I do 3 minutes all the time, but it doesn't have to be that, and it doesn't have to like the goal is like what the physiology coaching is to make the cold enjoyable, like for you to struggle well, to embrace it, not fight it, relax into it, exhale into it. A lot of breathing tactics for the cold tub, but like and I do a bunch of different cold tub stuff, but like I'll get it. Like some days I just get in and I go in and hold my breath for 30 seconds. Or some days I call it the drowning victim. I go in there and shake around for 15 seconds under the water. But some days I do 3 minutes. Some days I do 5 minutes. Some days I just do one song, even if that's 2.5 minutes or 5 minutes, or God forbid, whatever the 9-minute songs are on the planet, But just to keep myself adaptive and like not anticipating and that kind of thing. I do a lot of different things in the cold tub, but like electric was your word choice. All I'm chasing is how I feel after. And so I call the cold tub nature's cup of coffee. It's caffeine. How do you feel after? Awake, alert, energized, focused, alive. It's caffeine. Use it as such. And it doesn't have to be a suffer thing. The goal is to make it medicinal in my head, is because there is some health benefits to it. You can chase some of the dopamine crap, but it's just, how do you feel? Like it doesn't have to be something.
You dumb it down. You dumb it down. I like that.
Yeah. So it's just like, so I go and jump in I go cannonball in the cold tub all the time. It's caffeine to me, and I love caffeine. I love nicotine, but at the same time, like it's natural. It's nature's cup of coffee, and so the more you use it as such, I think the relationship changes. And even in my workshops, people that have never cold tub before, to pro athletes, I do 3 rounds of the cold and like the cycles. And the first round, I teach the breathing. The second round, I let them use and progress the breathing. And the last round, everybody holds their breath in the cold tub. It reframes the brain. Like it's the accomplishment I see people feel. But really, it's just like you're trying to break this negative and fearful emotion we have, and painful and struggle that we have with it. And
the voice that says, get the fuck out of here now.
Yeah, but like the voice is like, again, like thoughts are clouds in the sky. Like I approach it more as a focus activity for the TikTok generation we are. It's like, can you not focus for 3 minutes? Can you not keep? That's why I coach counts. I coach following the breath. I coach a bunch of things, but it's an opportunity to train the brain, particularly in stress and while pressing physiological buttons that downreg in stress. And it changes our physiological relationship with stress in general, which is why I think it's awesome to pair cold tub and breathing. But 2, it's like if you want to get into the research of it, but the research on meditation is honestly phenomenal. But like most meditations piggyback off breathing tactics, even just slow breathing. And then 2, from like the neuroplasticity standpoint, they all involve a count or a focus on either following the breath, on like spotlight technique, on sound, like the sound in the environment, feel, like can you feel the back of your hands? Can you feel your pinky finger? Can you feel your right leg? Can you feel the bottom of your right foot? Like all they're chasing, they're like smoke and mirroring you to keep your focus. And like when you lose focus, some of the meditations switch you to a different thing, but it's the same as like counting sheep. And that's what I refer to the counting in the cold tub as. We're chasing that friction, is when the mind wanders and says, suffer, you care about who's looking, whatever the fuck. Mind wanders, bring it back to the count, and you don't miss a count. And that's how you develop the ability to focus. And that gets into like focus, concentration, and attention, which are 3 different things that all need to be retrained. Because if we can't, like, anybody in athletes and high performance, like if you can't focus for 3 minutes, you're a problem. You're a liability, So it's like if we can't focus, the cold tubs in the morning is an awesome place to connect with your breath and train focus. And so I think it's more of a making the bed thing as something that should be suffering, because everybody loves coming home to like a made bed, and everybody loves being focused and hopefully feeling awake, alert, and alive.
Yeah, I really like your approach to that. And again, I'm only 4 or 5 days back into it. I clean I have the blue collar cold tub, as you say. I have the trough, and I live in Montana, so it's cold as fuck in the mornings. And I'm 5 a.m. hop in that thing, so I don't need any ice or anything like that. Nature does its duty for me. But being recently back into it, I'm I'm trying to take more of the approach that you just said. It's like making your bed. It's not necessarily do it to struggle or to necessarily do something hard. I'm chasing that feeling afterwards, which is I like the feeling of accomplishment. Of course, it was hard, but I'm just ready to go. I'm
Yeah.
ready to go.
And like, don't get my explanation twisted. It's set I speak in tolerances. It's setting your stress tolerance for the day. Same as why I like working out in the morning when I work working out in the afternoon.
Likewise.
Yeah. So it's like if I already did the hard thing, if I've already exposed myself to stress, like my stress tolerance is now here. So less things bother me. And like I use quotes a lot in my head where it's like you can tell the size of a person by the size of the things that disturb them. And if less disturbs me, I'm less disturbed, you know? So I always want a high stress tolerance. I want a high negative feedback tolerance. I want a high CO2 tolerance because it'll take more physical activity and stress to make me breathe with intensity, get the wind chime crazy, which usually leads to a crazy brain. Crazy physiology leads to like an agitated, emotionally responding brain. If my stress tolerance is here, it takes, again, you don't sweat the small stuff maybe. And then negative feedback tolerance is obviously mental, but in that realm, if all those things are high, I'm a pretty robust and resilient human.
You said Train the Brain earlier. Are you familiar with that company, Train the Brain LLC?
Nope.
Okay. The guy who runs it, his name is Tim Mann, friend of mine. You're in Ohio?
Yep.
He's right outside of Ann Arbor. That's where I'm from. If you don't mind, I'd love to connect you guys. You guys are kind of in the same space. He goes around and does workshops as well. I don't know if you do any collaborative things with anybody, but regardless, it'd be somebody cool for you to bounce ideas off of because he's in the exact same space as you, and you guys remind me a lot of each other. So,
hell yeah,
I'd love to make that connection. Brian, I want to be respectful of your time. I got one last thing for you, and this is a selfish thing. You've been on for an hour and 20 minutes. You kind of have a feel for me, the show, what I'm doing over here, the goal behind the podcast. Give me a couple people that you feel like would be a good fit for the podcast.
That you haven't had on, because you've had Bert and Kip on, right?
Correct. Yeah, Kip told me about you. That's how this happened.
Okay. Yeah. Who are fun people that are open to podcasting? I guess I'd rather follow up with a question so I can play chess with a little bit.
Absolutely.
Where are you trying to learn?
Everywhere. I want to talk to everybody about everything. This isn't just a lot of people get the podcast a little bit misconstrued where they think it's a hunting podcast. It's really not. It's not at all.
I'll link you and or connect you with he trains UFC fighters here in town, but his name's Dylan Seeley.
Okay.
Dr. Dylan Seeley. He's a chiro, but he's like one of my doctor filters on information biomechanics. He has some really cool remedies, I think, in the realm for like hunters as far as like back problems and how to turn shit on. And he has a rugby background himself, but he's one of my simplifiers. Fun to talk to. I have a couple military guys. I just don't know if they would come on that come to mind. Yeah, all I got's doctors in that realm.
We can circle back, no issue.
Yeah.
I usually get a lot of dead air when I ask that question anyways, so you're not the only one there. It's all good.
No, it's I just don't like as far as like I guess I feel bad asking people for podcasts half the time.
Yeah, I get a lot of no's, but it's okay.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the resilient side of podcasting.
I like the no's.
Yeah. I mean Lane would be fun. Yeah, I'll get you a bunch of people. I just I got to think about it, but I got to get running here in a second.
Yep, I'm letting you go. Where can people follow your journey online?
Most of what I do is at Brian_Peters10 on all socials. My company's called Breathing for Performance. We have a social media as well, and that's the website, breathingforperformance.com, and then Chasing Edges, where I basically just post quotes and podcast stuff. So I'm multi-branded.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Brian, I appreciate your time, man. This was super informative, and it was an honor having you on. I appreciate you, brother.
No, dude, you're a stud. You're great at what you do. You ask great questions. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, so the feeling's heavily mutual.
My man, if you'll do me a solid and just stay on for 10 seconds so we can get your file uploaded, and I'll let you bounce.
Yep, easy.
Thank you, brother.
Easy.